Loving Eliza by Ruth and Nordin, Chapter 20. Eliza sat on the bed and stared out the window, not really seeing anything. A tear trickled down her cheek. This was supposed to be a good day. Part of her wanted to take the picture frame and smash it. The only thing that stopped her was knowing that John's mother wanted him to have it. She pulled her knees up to her chest and rested her cheek on them. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths. All was not lost. John still loved her. He had taken her home. She had cried while she told him what she did and why. He didn't make any gestures to communicate. He had simply held her close and let her cry. Then she had asked to be alone, so he went to his work. She sat on the bed. She didn't know how much time passed as she sat there, contemplating her life and how tired she was of running from her past. Now that she'd come out and told everyone the truth, there was no hiding from it. And now she was going to have to face whatever consequences came from it. She was done running. But it hurt. There was no denying how much it hurt. The front door opened, and she lifted her head and turned her attention to the bedroom doorway. It had to be John. If it wasn't, the person would have knocked. Sure enough, John peered around the corner of the doorway and looked at her with a question in his eyes. If people avoided you before, you just wait. No one will get near you now. She swallowed a lump in her throat and turned back to the window. Another tear slid down her cheek. He sat next to her, his body warm and solid against her, and his lips brushed her shoulder. How can you still want to be with me? She asked, her voice trembling. He reached for her hand and pressed it against his heart. He loved her. Of course, the answer was so easy to him. But then, that's how John was. He saw things in black and white. Things were either good or they were bad. And when he looked at her, he didn't see any of the grays that had shadowed her for years. She tightened her hold on his hand and turned so that she was facing him. Even as she felt more tears forming in her eyes, she kissed him, taking comfort in his touch. She needed him. It'd been a long time since she had admitted that she needed anyone, and it scared her to no end to confess it. But she whispered, "I need you," before she buried her face in his neck. His response was to pull her into his arms and kiss the top of her head. They stayed still for a few minutes, and she was focused on the calm beating of his heart and the steady rhythm of his breathing. When it was just the two of them together, the rest of the world seemed to slip away, and nothing else mattered. She loved that most about being with him. He stroked her back, and she felt her muscles relaxed. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the moment, for she would learn to appreciate each moment for what it was, instead of worrying about what was going to happen next. Tomorrow would take care of itself. For now, she was loved and cherished, and she would drown herself in the affection her husband was bestowing upon her. The next day came, and to John's surprise, he saw Frank and Addie as they rode their buggy up to his property. He set aside the second vase that he had started for Eliza, hoping to make one for every room in the house, so that she could have flowers everywhere she went. He stood up and left the work building. He didn't expect anyone to come onto his land. People usually stayed away when things got unpleasant, and there had been no mistaking the uncomfortable atmosphere in town yesterday. As he approached Frank and Addie, he gave a hesitant wave. "How are you doing, John?" Frank asked, in his familiar, friendly tone. John relaxed. So they hadn't come to criticize Eliza. That was good. She needed to have friends in her corner, people besides him who would support her through this trial in her life. He wanted to thank them for coming out, but he didn't know how to do that unless he wrote it down. So he settled for shaking Frank's hand and smiling at Addie. After Frank helped Addie down from the buggy, she turned to John and took a package from the seat. "I figured that neither one of you wanted to go to town today to pick up your picture." She was right. They hadn't planned on it, so he nodded. "Well, we thought we'd bring the picture to you. Is Eliza ready to receive company? I'd like to give it to her." He motioned for them to follow him. When he opened the front door, he heard Eliza moving around in the bedroom. He gestured to the kitchen table for them to sit and went to find his wife. Eliza was gathering a pile of their dirty clothes and putting them into a basket. She smiled when she saw him. "Is there anything else you want me to wash today?" He shook his head and held his hand out to her. "What is it?" He waved her forward and pointed to the kitchen. She frowned. "Is someone here?" He nodded and smiled encouragingly at her. "Then it's good?" She sounded hesitant. He wished he could tell her that it was all right, but all he could do was smile and gently take her hand in his. She didn't fight him, but he noted the way her steps slowed as they got closer to the kitchen. Addie and Frank, who were sitting together, looked up as they entered the room. Addie jumped up and ran over to give Eliza a hug. John let go of Eliza's hand so she could hug Addie back. "How are you doing?" Addie asked. Well, Eliza glanced at John and then at Frank. "You did hear about me, about what I used to be?" Addie pulled away, but held onto her hands. "Yes, everyone knows by now, and we're terribly sorry for what happened to you when you were 14. Why, you were just a child." Frank cleared his throat. "It's a mighty shame. We're just glad that you got out of that life, and that you married up with John." "Melissa spoke about how excited she was that you were coming," Addie said. "Seeing as how her cousin is a preacher, it makes sense. She kept saying how wonderful it was that you were getting a second chance. Of course, I didn't really understand what she meant until yesterday. I hope you realize that you do have friends in this town." "Addie's been fretting up something awful that you and John will leave for a new town," Frank added. "We certainly don't want to see you two go." As soon as John saw the tears form in Eliza's eyes, he grabbed the handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. She laughed as she accepted it. "He always seems to know what I need." After she dabbed her eyes, she looked at them. "I can't tell you how much this means to me. I'm fortunate to have you all in my life." "We also came to bring you your picture." Addie pulled the lid off the box and took out the photograph. John leaned forward and thought it turned out very well. No one would know that Eliza had been shaking at the time that the picture was taken. He nudged her in the side and pointed to her. "You think I'm beautiful?" Eliza guessed. He nodded. "Now how do you two communicate like that?" Frank wondered, looking intrigued. "Oh, Frank," Addie began with a grin. "They don't need to speak to know what the other one is thinking. Love has its own language." "Well, I suppose you're right." He looked at John. "But I still need you to write things down for me." Eliza laughed again, and John suddenly realized how much that he missed that sound. Yesterday had been a somber day, and he hated watching her cry. He went to retrieve the silver frame from the parlor and came back so they could put the photograph in it. Then he showed it to her. "He doesn't look so tall when he's sitting, does he?" Eliza noted. Glancing at him, she said, "You can seem intimidating at times, you know." John blinked. "Him? Intimidating?" "That's true," Frank agreed. "It's because of your height." Eliza placed the picture down on the shelf above the cook stove. "Thank you for bringing this out. I do like it." "Every woman should have a picture of her and her husband," Addie commented. "Will you two stay for lunch? I was just about to make something." "Well, we'd be delighted. And let me help." Frank stood up. "I don't know about you, John, but I take that as my cue to leave." "What, you don't want to make a casserole dish?" Addie teased. "You know very well what would happen if I were to help out in the kitchen." Addie sighed. "He's right." She looked at Eliza and John. "He nearly burned down the kitchen in our first year of marriage. I have banned him from the cook stove ever since." "Well, you won't hear me complaining about that either." He turned to John. "You want to show me what you're working on?" John nodded and grabbed some paper and a pencil. It would be nice to have a real conversation with Frank for a change, instead of nodding or shaking his head. He kissed Eliza on the cheek. "Oh, now I can't have John showing me up here," Frank grumbled good-naturedly. He walked up to Addie, put his arms around her, leaned her back, and gave her a long kiss. By the time he set her up right, she was blushing. "There," he said. "Now when John here has been married to you for a good 20-some-odd years, he'll kiss you like that," he told Eliza before heading out of the house. Addie tapped Eliza on the arm. "We ought to come out here more often." John chuckled to himself as he followed Frank out the door.